On behalf of our president, Eli Gold, may I welcome you to this webinar on behalf of the Gold Institute for International Strategy. As many of you will know, the Gold Institute aims to engage in discussion of international security and political issues that will impact on our democracies. I should emphasize we are a non-partisan institute with conservative values, seeking to apply strategic vision and the lessons of the past to the challenges of the future. And we've got a tested international team of experienced political and military practitioners, aided by a wide range of guest experts. So our aim is to seek practical solutions to some of the problems that confront us. And this afternoon, we're going to talk about Turkey, a country for many years bound to the democracies through economic ties and through NATO. And at this moment, not only are we afflicted by a most terrible pandemic, but the challenges to our democratic way of life and the world are growing. The battle ahead will be between the democracies and their allies and the autocracies. We can't afford to lose friends. My argument is that Turkey is a big, important country that's been a good ally for some 75 years. And there's a danger that we short-sightedly and neglectfully, perhaps, let Turkey slip away from the democratic camp. Many will say, rightly, that there have been errors on both sides that have led to this situation. And this is, I believe, is very true. But the situation, in my opinion, is certainly not beyond repair. That's why this afternoon, we in the Gold Institute want to begin discussion of some of the difficulties in the relationship with Turkey and how these might be overcome. And I hope we'll have further discussions in the future. Let me just take a couple of minutes to set some of the context. The Western model that we cherish, characterized by personal freedom, the rule of law, democratic political systems, and liberal and free market economies that deliver rising prosperity to our people and a helping hand to those less fortunate. And I would suggest that each of these core characteristics has been open to question and has been under strain over these past 15 years. We can't just assume any longer that others will automatically want to join our club when there are other superficially attractive offers on the table. The world is changed. For many years, Turkey was being held up as a model for democracy in a Muslim land. And when the AK party came to power in 2001, it was seen as a moderate conservative party appealing to the Turkish grassroots under President Erdogan's leadership. Under his leadership, should I say, that's not how many see Turkey being ruled today. Some see Turkey as a country that's unmoored and believes that stopping Turkey's drift away from the West and into Putin's arms should be a priority on President Biden's list of action points. Some see this drift, and I don't want to overstate it, but some see this drift as a reaction to Western actions and unreliability as allies, failure to heed Turkish warnings over the 2003 Iraq war, failure to appreciate Turkey's contribution to NATO operations and to humanitarian actions, not least concerning the millions of refugees that have come to Turkey from Syria. Rebuffed by the European Union. To this day, Turkey remains an official candidate for the European Union, although this process has been effectively frozen for years. Failure to look after the Turkish population of northern Cyprus, insulting accusation over events that took place over a century ago, and the most damaging personal insult to President Erdogan, as he sees it, the failure of Western leaders to offer immediate support to Erdogan and condemnation of the coup attempt on the 15th of July 2016. I think that bit quite hard. And failure to understand Turkish concerns over terrorism, the dangers on our borders, and the enormous burden of those refugees. For its part, there are genuine Western concerns about Erdogan's support for political Islamism, in particular the Muslim Brotherhood, and anathema to so many Arab regimes which are our friends. His increasing intolerance of political opposition, and his apparent willingness to get into bed with Putin-led Russia that seems intolerant of his misdemeanors and is willing to respond to immediate security needs, not least with supply of the S-400 air defense missiles and a blind eye to Turkey's key role in the successful recovery of some parts of Azeri territory in Nagorno-Karabakh, which had been under the control of Russia's erstwhile close ally of Armenia. Some have never accepted Turkey's aspirations and don't seem to care about losing Turkey. Some might argue that American interests in the region are not what they were. And my belief is that Turkey is certainly not a lost cause. We need to re-establish trust and confidence, and remember that even President Erdogan is not guaranteed to stay in power. Turkish economy is under great stress. There have been splits in his AK party. He has some serious political rivals now. Istanbul and other main cities of Turkey are now led by non-AK party mayors. And it seems to me that we need continuous understanding and engagement with Turkey, applying the same tolerance as we do with other friendly regimes of different culture. And we need to keep our eyes on the real enemies: Russia, Iran, perhaps China, international terrorism. So with those thoughts, ladies and gentlemen, we have some distinguished speakers with us this afternoon. And the first of those speakers that I would like to introduce is Dr. Harold Rhoda. Dr. Rhoda is one of the few experts we have in the West who really understands the mentality of the Middle East. Dr. Rhoda spent more than 28 years in the office of the US Secretary of Defense and as an advisor on US Islamic affairs. He has a PhD in Islamic history at Columbia University, studied under Bernard Luth. He traveled extensively throughout the Islamic world. He speaks fluent Turkish. Dr. Rhoda, we're delighted to have you with us this afternoon. And perhaps I could ask you to give us your remarks. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. But what I'm going to say may not fit totally with what you have just said, and you'll hear why. I don't think that we should run after Turkey. And from what I'm going to explain about Erdogan, who I have known in the past and followed him since the very beginning, it's Turkey that left. And if we run after Erdogan, that is the equivalent of when Madeleine Albright was Secretary of State, and she was talking about Palestinian issues in Paris, and Yasser Arafat left, and she ran out really into the courtyard to pull him back, and no, come back. That's in essence where we are with Erdogan. If you're going to understand Erdogan, you got to understand him in his own cultural context, not ours. He doesn't think like us. For example, on democracy, and he speaks Turkish, he knows a bit of Arabic, but that's about it, and 3 words of English. His definition of democracy is as follows, and I'm going to explain why he thinks this. He said, democracy is like a train. You get on the train, and when you've reached your destination, you get off. These are not my words, they're his words. He is not interested in democracy. He loathes the secular Turkish Republic, founded, it's 100 years ago now by Kemal Atatürk. who tried to make Turkey, or to move it into the Western orbit. And as long as Turkey was basically ruled by people who accepted the Ataturk view, which is a separation of religion from state, that religion was in the realm of the private. It was not to be part of the state. As long as those people ruled, things were fine. And that basically happened until the late 90s. He was a protege of a man by the name of Erdogan, who, for various political reasons in the late 90s, became the prime minister of Turkey. And his goal, he was a fundamentalist, and it was full speed ahead to re-politically Islamify Turkey. Well, it didn't last. There was what they called the coup, the coup by an email, and he had to step down. Now, what did his proteges, like Erdogan, like Erdogan, the G is a soft, and it's not pronounced basically with a line over it in Turkish. What did Erdogan learn from this, from his master? Do things slowly. You don't do things instantly. You don't do it quickly. And so we'll pretend that we're, quote, moderates. But Erdogan in Turkish says very clearly, there's no moderate Islam. There's no extreme Islam. Islam is Islam. Now that enables him to define it whatever way he wants. Of course, Islam is extremely diverse, but that's not how Erdogan understands it. He grew up from the time that he was little in a poor neighborhood in Istanbul, hating Ataturk's secularism. His whole career has been based on the desecularization of the state and the reestablishment of some form of the Ottoman Empire, including Europe. Now, from a Muslim point of view, any land that ever was, is, or is Muslim must remain under Muslim rule forever. There's no such thing as the separation of religion from state as we understand it in the West. And he is active everywhere in the former Ottoman Empire, undermining the, let's say, the governments of these states. The Ottoman Empire was stopped twice at Vienna in 1683 was the last time. What is interesting, it was on September 11, 1683. And I can only say there's nothing coincidence about the idea of September 11th. The people who did the September 11th airplane bombings, they knew, or crashing into the World Trade Center, they know exactly what they were doing. And for them, symbolism is everything. So Vienna was the beginning of Muslim defeats. And since the whole area up to Vienna had been Muslim, it is by Islamic definition, it is still Muslim, because it remains Muslim forever. This is going to sound like it's an aside, but Islam lost Spain in 1492, but if you know Arabic and you follow the discussions on the net about Spain, what you will find is they are planning the reconquest of Spain. This is 520 some odd years, almost 530, you do the calculation later. There's no such thing as bygones be bygones. Erdogan, in the way when he was the mayor of Istanbul before he took over Turkey, the prime ministership and now the presidency, and really he's a dictator now because he's changed all the laws to get his way. He hates the West. In Turkish, he makes no bones about it. But we don't want to know Turkish. We don't want to know what he's thinking. We don't want to try to understand things as he does. We can't run after him. Frankly, an equivalent would be that the Jews in the ghettos trying to negotiate with the Nazis. Not possible. That's where we are. The truth is, if you want a bottom line of how we work for the future, Turkey might have a chance only when Erdogan is no longer running that country. Now, don't listen to me on this. The UAE, Bahrain, the Gulf countries, they're very Muslim countries. They hate Turkey with a passion because the Muslim Brotherhood, of which Erdogan is the informal titular head, he's not the head. They hate other forms of Islam because they say that's not Islam. Only my Islam is right. That's where we are. Now, to give you a little sense of what is on his mind and how he thinks, I want to talk about two small incidents. Many years ago, when the Americans, who are obsessed with finding moderates, we can deal with moderates, and we therefore, I hereby dub thee Sir Moderate. Oh my, so you speak the holy language, which is English, and you therefore think like me. And nothing could be further than the truth. Erdogan, when he, I think was he still mayor of Istanbul? It doesn't really matter, or he was prime minister of Turkey. He came to AEI, the American Enterprise Institute, and gave a political talk with translation. And someone asked me, would I be interested in attending? And I said, of course. I go, and my friend afterwards, who knew Erdogan, said, would you like to meet him? And I knew exactly then, and still the same, the guy's mentality. And I know what he thinks of Jews, and I am one. And I know what he thinks of Christians, because they're also not Muslims. There's only two worlds. There's the Muslims and the non-Muslims, from his point of view. My friend takes me up to shake Erdogan's hand. I am at the time an American government employee. I worked for the Pentagon. I had been the Turkish desk officer for a while at the Pentagon, and I worked on Turkish issues. My PhD is Ottoman history, and so I know something about these people. I'm 71 years old, and I've been working on this since I'm about 15. Anyway, I go up, and he is having an argument. Erdogan is an extremely emotional man. He's having an argument with some of his advisors, and the argument is about a business deal. Here he's giving a political speech. What is the business deal? Someone was building a building in Istanbul, and the building was too high, and he had put a big Turkish star with a green, surrounded by green, on the top of his building. And Erdogan is getting angrier and angrier, and he yells, Alevi köpek. Köpek in Turkish means dog. It is one of the worst insults that you can call anybody. Dogs are unclean in Islamic culture. They're used by shepherds to round up herds and all that, but you don't bring them in your house. What is Alevi? Alevi, maybe 20–30% of Turkey, are not Sunni Muslims. Alevi is another form of Islam, let's say. Now, what is interesting, if Turkey's AK party is a Turkish party, one would assume it could have people of all backgrounds in it. There are no Alevis in that party, which is 20–30% of the country. Why? Because it's a Sunni party. It hates the Alevis. And when you ask these people, what do you think about Alevis? They say, well, they're immoral, and they do things with their sisters and mothers, because that's what these Sunni stories are about the Alevis. So he's hated. Why am I bringing this? When he becomes prime minister, his goal at first is to put together a political coalition where he can basically have a huge majority to ram through what he wants. And he said all Muslims are equal, all Muslims are the same. Now, what is interesting is that there's a very large percentage of Turkey is in fact Kurdish. It's not the southeast. The largest Kurdish city in the world is Istanbul. It's Istanbul. It's about 30–40% Kurdish. And the definition of a Kurd, you may not know any Kurdish. The definition of a Kurd is what was your father and your father's. You may only know Turkish, but the identity comes from the father. Now, Erdogan and most Turks in the world are Hanafi Sunni Muslims. There are 4 types of Sunni Muslims. One is called Hanafi. Turks are by and large Hanafi. Erdogan is a Hanafi. I told the story about Alevis. Now, most Kurds who are Sunnis, and the vast majority are Sunnis, they're not Hanafis. There's something called Shafi'i, or in Turkish, Shafi. Well, there's only one problem. You can't say politely, you can't call a Kurd a dog. So instead, Erdogan, someone I know, was in his presence, and it was a Kurdish issue, and Erdogan exploded and said, Shafi köpek. Köpek, you now know what a dog is. He didn't call them, because the Kurds were not going along with what Erdogan wanted. The point is, I want everybody to get along my way, to do it my way, and I'm right, you're wrong. As the great late Professor Bernard Lewis said, he summarized it as follows: I'm right, you're wrong, go to hell. That's his view. On his relationship with ISIS, the Islamic State, he's deeply involved with it. His family makes money off of these hospitals, and they look the other way when ISIS people crossed through Turkey into Syria or Iraq. So I can say in the Turkey that I know and love, and that we know and love, and that Jeffrey, you talked about, that's the Turkey that was. They had a policy way back when Ataturkism ruled Turkey, which is no problems with your neighbors, including Greece, including some, you don't make problems. But if you now look and you go around the borders of Turkey, they've gone from no problems anywhere to problems with every one of their border states. I would like basically to summarize, I want Turkey to be part of the Western Alliance. But it has to be committed not to try to Islamify the world. And that is what he's doing. That is what he has his own organizations here in the United States, which is trying to Islamify the United States. The Muslim Brotherhood makes it very clear, since we in the West no longer believe in ourselves, especially Europe, but now that we have the leadership that we do here in Washington, since we don't believe in the values of the founding fathers of the United States anymore, then, and we don't believe in Christianity, we don't believe in Judaism, we're post-Christian, we're post-Jewish, well, that means that we are ripe for the pickings. And that's how Erdogan sees us. And his goal is to re-Islamify everybody, the world, to reify those areas which were under Islamic rule in the past, to reestablish rule. And remember, government exists for the good of Islam. If you read classic Islamic texts, government is to promote good and eradicate bad. What is the definition of good and bad? Not what you and I think. What is Islamic is good. What is not Islamic is bad. I will end more on maybe one other small thing here. The leaders of UAE, they never talk about Islamic fundamentalism. They talk about Islamic radicalism and extremism. That's what they oppose. Why are they using these words? And Erdogan, from their point of view, is a radical extremist, but they will not ever say fundamentalist. Why? Because if they allow that word, going back to the fundamentals, they're in essence saying that they've abandoned the fundamentals of Islam. And they can't say that, and they won't say that. We all, our allies in the Gulf, our allies throughout the Muslim world, we must understand that we are in a battle with people who wish to take over the entire world. They know exactly how to probe and take advantage of our weaknesses. And Erdogan of Turkey is one of the major players in that game. The result is, I want Turkey, as I said, to be part of the Western alliance. But until he's gone, and until the Islamists who are running that country, until they're gone, it's impossible. I'm very sorry. Here and there, you'll see he'll change his mind. He'll say this, he'll say that. All of a sudden, it looks like he wants to deal with Israel now. No, he's floundering. He's flailing. He is not popular in Turkey right now. Let us hope that the Turks are wise enough that they will, whenever way they can in their way, get him out of office. He runs all the institutions of Turkey, including what was the secular military of Turkey. And we have no chance at the moment. Sorry, but thank you.
Okay. Harold, Dr. Rhoda, thank you so much.
Harold, I'm a Harold. I'm a Harold.
Yeah, well, great. Very, very interesting. And a lot of what you said,
sad.
I wouldn't at all disagree with. That we'll do a Q&A at the end when we've heard from our other speakers.
Sure, sure.
And I suspect that you know, a lot of what they say will accord with your views. But the question I think I'd like you to mull over is the fact that Erdogan's going to be in power probably now, well, at least for the next 2 years, maybe for longer. 2 years in some ways is quite a long time, although I have to say this last year seems to have disappeared, and I'm not quite sure where. So what do we do now? What do we do over the next 2 years? How do we keep? We're talking about drift at the moment. After all, Turkey is still a NATO ally. Turkey is still, very much in, if you like, in the Western camp, but with some aberrations. There is drift. How do we stop the drift over the next 2 years? That's really the question I'd like to come back to. Maybe you don't think it's possible. And it seems to me your argument really is with Erdogan rather than with Turkey, obviously. And
yes, of course. Of course.
Yeah.
Turkey, I want Turkey part of the alliance. Anyway,
yeah,
other people should
Harold, we'll come back to that in a jiffy, if I may. And can I turn now to Matthew Brodsky? Matthew, of course, is one of our distinguished fellows here at the Gold Institute. He's a senior policy analyst and a former director of policy at the Jewish Policy Center. So, Matthew, can I turn to you?
Sure, no problem. Thank you for hosting this. And if you're looking for someone to be extremely pro-Erdogan, you've come to the wrong person.
No, I'm not looking for that at all. I'm looking for discussion.
No, I know. Look, and
I'm looking for a way ahead.
I think it's definitely important to certainly, as Harold went through the history, which is extremely important. It's important to know that Ataturk set Turkey on a secular path, and it was great for the Western world. The reversals by Erdogan have been major. It is a Erdogan problem. It is a problem with his party, and without Erdogan leading, and without him supporting so actively the Muslim Brotherhood and engaged in so many policies that are bad for the United States and bad for our allies in the region, we could actually have a good relationship. The unfortunate thing is that he is, of course, engaged in many policies that are at odds with us and our allies. Specifically, we can talk about. I'm just going to go through a few of these here. Northeast Syria, for instance. This is where we work with our Kurdish allies, the SDF. He's launched some 3 cross-border operations, like full-blown operations. The UN Human Rights Report has accused Turkish-backed extremists of rape and looting areas that Turkey illegally occupies there. I should say we know that Biden is known in the past for having pro-Kurdish sympathies, and he could be more vigilant against Erdogan if that's something he decided to do in Northeast Syria. And there are indications that we might end up doing that by accident, mostly because we would be re-embracing the Obama-era doctrine, and Brett McGurk, I believe, is going to be back at the helm doing this, if I understood correctly. The most major issue, at least as far as our Defense Department is concerned, though it's quite obvious, is the issue of the S-400 purchase, the missile and air defense system that Erdogan has purchased from Russia. And of course, Turkey has been involved in our F-35 Joint Strike aircraft. It's our stealth aircraft. It's one of the best that we have. So you don't want to have a F-35 sitting next to S-400 as they collect all the data that is necessary. It's about as highly classified information as you can possibly have. We tried to make accommodations for many years to get Erdogan the Patriot missile system. There are other systems, of course, available on the global stage, but Erdogan decided he wanted the S-400 so that it would create leverage. This has, I already spoke. Sorry, I didn't. This has led the United States to impose penalties under the Countering America's Adversaries Through Sanctions Act, which I believe went in toward the end of the Trump administration. President Trump himself, of course, was very reluctant to make any moves against Erdogan, which was at odds with the State Department. Incidentally, what's interesting about how Erdogan has played Turkey's role is that it usually takes our Defense Department. They're like the lagging indicator. You can have a president come on board and the executive have a certain policy, and then it could take almost the entire administration to get the State Department finally aligned with it if people aren't fighting against you in cross purposes. Always the Pentagon is the latest one, is the last actor looking at their military alliances, them and the CIA with whatever assets they may have. Erdogan managed to actually unite all branches of the US government pretty much against him, including the Defense Department. And that's actually, I would point out, something fairly rare. He also, of course, is engaged in, Erdogan has engaged in attacks against US embassy staff. It's what I would call his hostage diplomacy. He's imprisoned over 50 Americans and European nationals ever since 2016. There were 3 foreign service nationals or Turkish citizens that were working at US as consular employees for the US. They became targets of the same politically motivated charges and his smear campaign. And since 2017, they've been convicted on these substantiated charges. This is something the United States would very much like to see reversed. I'm sure many of us are familiar with the Pastor Andrew Brunson case. He was finally able to return to the US in October 2019. This is all just part of the tools that that Erdogan engages in and that he uses. It's good to see our Congress basically on a bipartisan level wanting to push back on that. Has Turkey essentially now also as a world leader in the jailing of journalists. It's not a distinction one would really like to have, but that's what he's doing. Of course, one of the biggest issues, just as far as the US is concerned, if we're looking at Iran, is the fact that the largest sanctions evasions operation in modern history was done by Turkey. Their gas for gold scheme with Holobank. This is a case now that's in the Southern District of New York. This has been an incredible amount of money that Erdogan and Turkey has essentially used to help Iran avoid sanctions. Really, if we just allow the Justice Department to continue on its case, it would hopefully have devastating consequences for Erdogan. This is something we should not allow to have happen, but it's a part of Turkey's, I guess it's desire to essentially be in bed with as many parties as they can, which they feel, Erdogan feels gives them as much leverage. It's also a similar tactic we've seen used by Qatar, both of whom are the leading backers of the Muslim Brotherhood, who they back in countries all around the world. For Turkey, of course, that includes Hamas. Between Turkey and Israel, Turkey, of course, as Harold said, Erdogan is looking to recreate his caliphate. And of course, the long-term goals is to recreate what they already had, including in parts of Europe. He's also, of course, vowed to liberate Al-Aqsa Mosque. On the ground, it's something interesting to see in the eastern portion of Jerusalem. You've had the Turkish consulate in Jerusalem and two quasi-governmental Turkish agencies that are engaged in activities, spending over $40 million to essentially Islamize Eastern Jerusalem. You will see the increase in Turkish flags, posters of Erdogan there in the past 5 or 6 years or so. They're investing tens of millions in Islamic missionary or dawah activities, renovation of Muslim institutions. This, of course, poses a threat to Jordan's claim as running the Waqf on the Temple Mount. Israel has not, I don't think, done enough to act against it, but in the realm of symbolism, it is definitely important, and it is something that people see. And of course, there are long-term implications for it. Clearly, when you look at Israel and the Abraham Accords and looking toward having better relations with Gulf countries, if you look at a future with Saudi Arabia, these are all countries that have very bad relations for obvious reasons against Turkey. A lot of that is primarily Muslim Brotherhood actions. These are countries who also do not want to see Turkey having a far-enhanced role inside of Jerusalem. And it is very persuasive. It's essentially part of the Muslim Brotherhood action that they do, which is to attract the young through this dawah system and instill them with their version of Islamic values. And of course, the Muslim Brotherhood is the lake from which Hamas sprung. The rhetoric and anti-Semitism, this is one of the very clear examples where you don't really get to make one really can't make the case that, look, I'm just being anti-Israel, it's not anti-Semitism. He's both anti-Semitic and anti-Israel. Aside from the claims of Israeli genocide against Palestinians, if you just look at a recent study on Turkish school curriculum, finds that Erdogan made very significant changes to their textbook that basically increase anti-Semitism as a separate metric from the increased demonization of Israel with anti-Semitic messaging, stressing conflicts and problems in the Middle East that can be attributed to Israel, but also specifically to Jews. That's something that I don't think anyone in the West should be wanting to see. Of course, they are the prominent supporters of Hamas, as I mentioned, came from the Muslim Brotherhood. There are several cases, recent ones, that Israel has noticed with the confiscating of around $120,000 of goods stemming from January 2021, just this year. An effort from Hamas to transfer funds from front organizations that they have inside of Turkey and Istanbul. There's also something that the United States has been looking at, Turkey and the Iranian Quds Force and Hamas with front organizations that were set up in 2014 and Istanbul. This same system that they had in place was actually also used for them to pass money to the Islamic State. So again, it's Shia, Sunni Islamists, Salafis, Muslim Brotherhood. It's the whole gift basket of enemies that we would face. That's who Erdogan is rolling with, unfortunately. Now, the US has taken actions, and I would say that Secretary of State Blinken in February of just this year, since a month ago, drew attention to the troubling human rights abuses taking place in Turkey. And I assume under a Biden administration, human rights will take a more central role. Clearly, there's a lot of meat on the bone there. There have been letters by 54 US senators that have been urging Biden to confront Erdogan over this type of behavior. There's, of course, the picked up just in the past week or so, the urging of Biden to recognize the Armenian genocide, which is something obviously Erdogan doesn't want to see. There's a bipartisan coalition in the US looking to do that. Look, so I'll close basically by saying what we have is a Turkish strongman who's steering the ship for Turkey, and it's an unfortunate situation. It's a house of cards, but it's built on his iron-fisted authoritarianism and his idea is military adventurism abroad. A lot of the military adventurism is geared toward reestablishing this type of caliphate that he wants to see. That's how he sees Turkey's role in the future. But a lot of it is the fact that he has grossly mismanaged Turkey's economy. And by having new adventures to spark it, new adventures almost on a monthly basis with Europe, with what he's doing in Libya, with Greece, with the Caucasus, these are all ways to really turn the attention away of the people from the economic strife to Erdogan doing, valor and battle around Turkey's periphery. I guess for Biden, he came from the Obama administration, which grossly misread Erdogan. I mean, they'd called him a man of principle and a moderate Muslim Democrat, quote, a potential role model for Muslim leaders. That clearly did not turn out to be the case. I would argue that was not the case at all at any point during the Obama administration. So who knows what mistakes we'll see. I'll, turn it back over to you. I can get into during the Q&A session, anything related to the future and how we would deal with it. That gets into a counterterrorism argument and how Biden may approach policy.
Yeah, well, thanks, Matthew. And I mean, I think the difficulty is that if we're not careful, we sort of paint Turkey as to be a sort of enemy state.
Frenemy at best.
What?
A frenemy at best.
Well, this is where I think we need to take great care. And I would put the same question, which I hope we'll come back to, is where do we go from here? Because unless you disagree with the fundamental point that this is not a time to be dispensing with allies and friends. We're living in a very difficult and dangerous world at the moment, and where if people drift off in the wrong direction, it's extremely threatening to our own interests and our own security. So I'll come back to that. But meanwhile, and with great delight, can I turn to Naro Zagros? Naro, of course, it's very well known to us. He's a Gold Institute Senior Fellow. He's a Senior Policy Analyst, and he's Vice President of Soran University in the Kurdistan of Iraq. So can I turn to you, Naro?
Sure. Thank you, Geoffrey, and thanks to everyone. I think first of all, it's an interesting subject, and we can go on forever talking about all these Turkish problems and the problems are facing the region, the problems are facing the West, and how to repair our relation with Turkey. But I'm going to focus mainly on one or two issues, and we'll leave the rest of the discussions for another panel, another seminar perhaps. So we have to remember that Turkish problem, it's a multi-dimensional. There is no one way to look at the problems that we are in with Turkey in one way, and sometimes we think we can solve the problem either by accepting Erdogan and what Erdogan is doing, or rejecting Erdogan. So it's not like that. It's not black and white. Some of the problems we have with Turkey has roots and has history. But generally, if we go back and just see the context, in 2002, when AKP came to power, they won the majority of seats, and they were the only party after 11 years to win elections by a majority. And for 12 years, what Erdogan did, Erdogan brought in prosperity, economic prosperity to Turkey. Erdogan tried to come closer to Europe. And I have to say, I might disagree with some of our friends here that Europe mishandled the relationship with Turkey first, especially the European Union. I don't think the European Union was fair to Turkey and to Turkish Erdogan, because they thought Erdogan it's somebody from the Muslim Brotherhood, which is in some ways correct, but Erdogan wasn't trying to come closer to the East. He was trying to come closer to the West. But when he realized that all the paths to Europe is shattered, that he has no hope, then he turned to the East. Because I don't want to go into every detail how he tried to come closer to the West and abandon the East completely and the Islamic world completely. But this is for a different thing. So what Erdogan did, it attracted lots of young people in Turkey to vote for him. Erdogan's message attracted to lots of liberals and lots of pro-democratic voices in Turkey to vote for him, including somebody like Orhan Pamuk or other writers, and some even the gay and lesbian community in Turkey at some point voted for him. So what he did was something remarkable, and also he was trying to get rid of corruption in the country. This is the 12 years of Erdogan premiership. He tried to get rid of corruption in Turkey. He tried to dismantle the dictatorship by the army, because if you see the Turkish history, since the creation, there has always been military coups against anyone who was different from the founder's vision. So when he realized that his hope with Europe is going nowhere, then he turned to East. When he turned to East, then the second phase of Erdogan started. After 2014 election, where he couldn't win the majority, then what he did, he came closer to some of his old enemies inside Turkey, including MHP, an ultra-nationalist Turkish party. When he joined forces with MHP, AKP became a different AKP. And after that, European focus on Turkish politics reduced only to one actor, only Erdogan, and so did Turkish people. And Turkish people at the moment see Erdogan as somebody who is going to define modern Turkey, either in a good way or bad way. And for that, Erdogan is on a path. The way he is behaving, and he is entangled Turkey with so many great political dilemmas in the Middle East, in Syria, in Iraq, in Yemen, in Qatar, in Libya, but also Turkish relationship with friends like Saudi Arabia, like the United Arab Emirates, all of this, and also Iran. So Turks and the world is going to see how Erdogan is playing his game while he has entangled Turkey with these problems. If he came out victorious, then he will be another Atatürk in Turkish history. If not, it will be the end of his premiership in Turkey. And I think right now, Turkey is in danger, economically, socially, politically, but also Erdogan's popularity is diminished, and he's losing votes inside major cities, including Istanbul, where his strong base when he came to power was Istanbul. He was a mayor of that city. It's the biggest city in Turkey. And he's losing vote among the Kurdish people in the east. When he became an MP, he was on a list in a Kurdish town in the east. And he's no longer on the list of that city anymore. But when he became the first MP under Necmettin Erbakan leadership, or after Necmettin Erbakan leadership, was on a Turkish Kurdish list, Kurdish city list. So, but before all these problems happened, Turkey had the potential to become the hub for an Eastern Union, if you like, just like the European Union. Turkey to be the center, the backbone of uniting all these forces in the Middle East. Turkey had the power to bring in all the enemies and friends together to solve long historical problems between different factions of the East. But Turkey is no longer the same. Turkey is becoming more nationalistic, more Islamic. And that's why I believe that Turkey, after Erdogan, can only be either the strongest country in the East, or it will be changed forever with a new leadership, no longer Erdogan and his party to be there. And despite the external problems, Erdogan also faces internal problems at the moment. The United Alliance against him, mainly from the different opposition political parties, are becoming stronger. The Turkish youth is turning to deism. Even in one of the censuses that they gathered, the young Turks in AKP, which is an Islamic party in Turkey, there is a huge vote and huge portion of people are turning to deism in Turkey. So, and his alliance with the ultra-nationalist political party, with the MHP in Turkey, is damaging his reputation, and it's damaging the reputation of AKP. The economy is going down day by day. Turkish lira is losing its values, and his relation with the West and with America is getting worse and worse. Having said that, his relationship with America was good under Trump, but now with the new president, we don't know how things will pan out, but so far it's not looking very good. The American relation with Turkey is going from bad to worse, I think. And while Turkey is facing these problems, Turks inside Turkey are turning to Erdogan and blaming Erdogan. That's why Erdogan can no longer, we don't have an option with Erdogan and with Turkey to say, okay, if we offer Erdogan and Turkey this and that, then Turkey will come back to Western democracies and will patch up problems that we have in the past 10 years, and we will start from the place where we had good relation with Turkey. Erdogan and Turkey's on a path cannot be returned. He is going to come out either victorious or somebody who's going to lose his premiership in Turkey. I can go on for longer and say more about Turkey, but I'll wait until if there is a question to answer. And obviously there will be more things to say about Turkey, but for now this will be my end.
Okay. No, thank you so much, Naro. very, very interesting, very useful. Maybe we could come back to the specific Kurdish question and how Turkey is actually handling that, given that there is a very significant Kurdish minority in Turkey. As you rightly said, I think all of you have seen it, that of course there's a very large proportion of the Turkish population that doesn't support Erdogan. We're talking about nearly half the population. If you look at the opinion polls at the moment, you'll see that Erdogan's popularity is slipping and the popularity of others is rising. We've seen Babacan, Davutoglu have both left the AKP and set up their own political parties for different reasons, I have to say, but each taking a different perspective on the leadership of Erdogan. We have the amazing victory of Imamoglu in Istanbul. I mean, after all, this is where Erdogan made his name, in that city, and now he doesn't have an AK mayor, either in there or in many of the other large cities of Turkey. So I think we have to recognize that there is a very significant political opposition to Erdogan, but that opposition is very very divided, coming at it from many different points of view, and it'd be interesting to see how that might come together, or indeed whether or not there is a pragmatic side to Erdogan himself. I mean, the discussion so far has focused on his almost immovable Islamist agenda, that nothing's going to change his approach there. But on the other hand, if we look back, for example, the relationship with the Kurds, there was a period when he had negotiations with Öcalan. There were a lot of Kurds that were supportive of Erdogan. He seemed to be adopted a more liberal approach to many of the Kurdish cultural issues. And then it all took a turn for the worse. But there have been periods where he has responded. He has shown pragmatism. And I wonder if we look at the thought that, yes, 2023, according to the current calendar, that's when the elections might be expected. Whether he will try to bring about further changes to the constitution to enable him to remain in office, because technically at the moment, of course, he can't stand to be president again, although there is a doubt about when his first presidency actually took place. There's a bit of a legal argument over that. But in any case, looking ahead, and with others in his party, looking at the sort of all the difficulties within his party, in order to hold it together, in order to get another electoral mandate, whether they have to recognize a lot of the discontent that there is about many aspects of Turkish policy under their leadership. So, I'd be interested to see whether any of you have thoughts on that more pragmatic side, that more transactional side, if you like, even to Erdogan. But so I don't know who'd like to come in. So Harold, can I just see you had your hand up? Could we turn to you first of all? And then if others wish to, others who haven't spoken, others listening in, if there are questions that you'd like to put to all or particular members of our panel today, or points that you wish to raise, then please raise your hands and we'll try and accommodate you. Thank you so much. So Harold, yeah.
Let's say a point in understanding, quotes, a Turkish democracy, unquote, because it isn't. The Turkish political system is based on strong men. Let me give you two stories. There used to be a President Demirel many years ago, long gone. I remember at a rally he was talking, and the crowd began to yell in Turkish, "Baba bizi kurtar." Daddy, please save us. That's how they understand the role of leaders. There are a lot of people, young people today, who don't, but they themselves, a lot of them are leaving the country because they see no hope in this. Another story is that there was another political wannabe many years ago who comes to town, and it was around, a large rally, and he's talking, and people are, mildly responding, whatever like this, and at the end there's more than polite applause, and then comes the real thing. He sits afterwards with some of the local important people in the town, and they bring some of their people. Mr. President, can you help us with this? My son wants to get into this school or that, another like this. And that's what it was all about. Strong men who can do things. I wish everything I was saying were not true. I wish I was wrong. I'd be happy to be wrong. But I cannot see for the foreseeable future that we will have, in any form, a positive relationship with Turkey. We're told we should work with the opposition. Most of these opposition people are weak. They, in an odd way, even help Erdogan because he's not weak, although he's floundering, as I said before. So I wish us well.
What if Turkey were to turn around and say, well, look, we're withdrawing from NATO? What would be your view of that? For their sake, I think they would be doing a very stupid thing. That's not the question. But here's the answer. Again, I'm not interested in how we think about it. I'm interested in how they think about it. Over history, there have been 13 wars between the Turks and the Ottoman Empire, or whatever, and Russia. And guess what? The Turks lost every single one of those wars, with the possible exception of the Crimean War, when Britain came in for its own reasons on the side of the Ottoman Empire. No, Turks don't have an option besides us. Again, I go back to that awful analogy that I use, Mrs. Albright as Secretary of State running after Arafat. It's the worst thing you can do in the Middle East. Buddy, if this is how you feel, good riddance. We have many other people who are very pro-American. I assume from Dr. Zagros here that, you're in Kurdistan, if I'm right. And look, there's a strategic relationship that America has with the Kurds. The Kurds tried to give America, come and build 2 bases here. And I know this were meetings with the illustrious President Obama. How do I know? Because the Kurds told, and Obama said no. My question is a deeper one. Has Turkey, and I don't have an answer for this, has Turkey outlived its usefulness for us? If it wants to go and bend over, as they would say in Turkish, to the Russians, they know what the history was in the past. And let me just give one little thing here. Erdogan went to visit Putin. And you can see on the net their initial, the meeting and how it is. What you have, to begin with, Erdogan is held back a little time-wise because Putin was busy. This is an insult in the Middle East. But second of all, when you see the picture in the actual room of the discussions, Putin has a picture or a statue, and I can't remember which it is, of Catherine the Great there, who beat
Turkey, it's the subtleties. We in the West, if I remember in all the years I worked in the government, when you read cables from Americans back to the United States, American ambassadors and their staffs, well, they told us this. It doesn't matter what you say, it matters what you do. No.
Okay.
If Turkey is stupid enough, if Erdogan is stupid enough that he wants, listen, we have, with the Kurds, there's no question about it, a strategic alliance. And I just want to say one small remark about the population of Turkey. Whatever we think the figures are, the Interior Ministry in Turkey knows very well what the figures are. Erdogan has said publicly, by the year 2038, there will be a 50-50 Kurd-Turkish population in Turkey. No, they know very well that it's already there. People who consider themselves Kurds, who are not, from our definition, they don't speak Kurdish, they don't even know kitchen Turkish after 2 or 3 generations. They can only have discussions in Turkish, and intellectuals only in Turkish or whatever language, but not Kurdish. We're already over 50% of Kurdish population. That's it.
Okay, Harold, thank you so much. Maybe come back to you on a couple of points. I know John Volstetter has got a question. Can you unmute yourself, John? Nice to see you.
Yes, hello everyone. I have 2 points to make for comment, and anyone who wants to comment is welcome. One is that there's the question of Incirlik, which of course we were able to use for Desert Storm, but not for Iraqi freedom. It seems to me inconceivable that if we ever got in any kind of a conflict with the Russians, that the Turks would allow us to use Incirlik in any major way. And the question is, if they will only allow us to use it if it helps the likes of Erdogan, whether we would be better off trying to move those assets elsewhere. And very specifically as a subset question there, I think there are something like 60 or W61 bombs there or something, nuclear weapons that are stored in Incirlik. And whether we should remove either the bombs in total, or if we can separate the cores out, which would obviously make for a much lighter load, fly those out of there as a hedge against bad things happening in the future, since it's unimaginable that the Turks would authorize us to use those weapons. And in the event of any kind of a nuclear conflict, I could see them seizing Incirlik if the Russians were somewhere involved, to make sure the Russians weren't tempted to do something. So
John, to my mind, of course, that just underlines the need to get back into a sensible relationship here. But I'd be interested in the other panel members who have a response on them to John's question there.
Well, I have some thoughts, but I don't want to monopolize the discussion. There are 2 other panelists here. That's not right. Okay, I'll say something.
Matt, would you like to?
Yeah, I didn't realize the mute was turning on and off. Look, that's a real issue. I don't think that there's, it's not clear to me why at this point, after you've had so much demonstrated behavior from Erdogan, that we would want to have a nuclear weapon and a major base that we frankly can't use during times that we need it. Why we would want that in Turkey? Frankly, it's the same thing I see with the Al Udeid Air Force Base, which is unfortunately the headquarters of CENTCOM, which is in Qatar. These are 2 bases in 2 countries that you can see are playing all sides, have annoyed our actual long-term allies, our traditional allies in the region, and we would be better served having them in the UAE, in Bahrain, in other places in the region. Yeah, that's just a quick answer. I completely agree. It's something that I think, unfortunately, our Pentagon has, even though they've come to the understanding that Erdogan is in fact not an ally and it's not as easy to paper over. They have not made that conclusion really when it comes to Qatar, and they haven't made that conclusion when it comes to moving our military bases away from either country, unfortunately.
Okay.
Can I
yeah.
just respond to the nuclear thing here? Okay, Incirlik base. I do not know whether this is true. I'm out of the government for 11 years now. But I had the impression that in some way, shall we say, the nuclear weapons are no longer in Turkey. I may be wrong, but it's an impression that I have. And look, when you're talking about Incirlik base and using it against whatever problems America would have, as John Wolfstetter, well, I haven't seen you in a billion years, but whatever. We're all both getting older. Anyway, the nuclear weapons. The reason we couldn't use the Incirlik and other NATO bases, whatever, in Turkey when we went into Iraq, is because Erdogan engineered a vote in parliament, when he controlled parliament, where they lost by 3 votes. That is what we wanted, lost by 3 votes. Now, a lot of our guys here in the American government chose to ignore this and listen to Erdogan, who lied to us all the time through his teeth. It said that he tried, but he failed. Well, that's not true. It's a lie. And it was not the military or others who stopped it. It was Erdogan himself and his people. They could have gotten what they wanted. They chose not to. So the question of using Incirlik and other bases becomes a moot point, because he will do what he wants. He owns Turkey at the moment. It is his fiefdom, and there's not much anybody else can do at the moment. And that's it. And I, again, please understand, all of you, I hate what I am saying. Hate is the right word, but it doesn't matter. You know, another thing that the late Professor Lewis used to say is, you spit in my eye and I say it's raining. No, there are a whole bunch of things like this. Or when Middle Easterners started to scream at us at parties, diplomatic parties, about all the awful things that America is doing. So many of our diplomats would say, oh, what have we done wrong? How do we make it right? Or Bernard used to say, put it right. No. Yeah. We're great. America and the values of the founding father is an awesome place.
Okay, great. All right, Harold. Well, we can all agree with that. Let me turn to Naro just quickly on that question. We're going to run out of time, gentlemen. I've got another question, by the way, which I want to put to you. We haven't talked a lot about the relationship between Turkey and Iran, and I wonder if we could just touch on that as well. So let me, first of all, for a quick comment on Incirlik, perhaps, Naro, and then maybe you could pick up on that further question.
Yeah, thanks, Geoffrey. It's an interesting question regarding Incirlik, because for so far, this place has been a very solid, there has been a very solid American base in that place, just to see what's happening in the East, but also oversee Russian maneuvers in the region. So, but the tenuous relationship between America and Turkey, it started with the Iraq War, when when Harold pointed out in the parliament, where the majority of MPs, only by a few votes, the majority, voted against the notion of using the base against to invade Iraq. So since then, the relationship with Turkey is very tenuous, but regarding the future of Incirlik, it's always been in the mind of Americans, and I think no sensible American and no sensible American analyst who is familiar with military and strategies see this angelic base as something to invest for the future. But what makes American position very weak at the moment, their base in Iraq, it's no longer wanted. Iraqi parliament a few months ago voted, the majority of MPs voted to, in their words, in the words of Iraqi MPs, to kick out Americans in the country altogether and dismantle and destroy their bases. So America is looking for alternatives at the moment, in my mind, and I think when they redeploy their staff in this Iraq and Incirlik base, they might move them elsewhere in the region. Jordan is one of the places which could be very good. It's still very close and it's in the heart of the problems in the region. But also Iraqi Kurdistan can be used as a place for the American soldiers in the future. It all depends on the future relationship between America and the Iraqi government, if they want to build a compound here or a base in Iraqi Kurdistan. Going to Turkey, Turks and Turks have not been in good relationship for so many years. There is a historical context in that, but also in modern era, their relationship has been very bad until when the Kurdish referendum took place in 2017. The Turks, Iraqis, by Iraqis I mean Arab Iraqis, and the Iranians came together in this alliance, these three forces, against the Kurdish referendum for independence. And since then, their relationship has been good. And Iranian citizens right now can travel to Turkey and visa-free. They get the visa when they arrive and vice versa. And Turkey is exporting lots of good to Iran, and Turkey is buying oil from Iran. And Iranian oil, I think it's 48% of the Turkish, I could be wrong on the exact number, either 48 or 53% of Turkish oil is coming from Iran. So Turkey has been benefiting from this Iranian sanction. And in fact, they are turning a blind eye on the sanction on Iran, and they are still making trades, trade agreements with Iran. Having said that, there is always a bit of animosity between them, because in the end, we are talking about two historical empires who fought each other for 500 years, the Safavids and the Ottomans. Today's Turkey and today's Iran, they are modern versions of these two great empires in the region which fought, hated each other for 500 years. So there is always this kind of animosity there. But at the moment, the relationship, it's neither great nor bad between the two.
Sounds like a relationship with France, right? Yeah. Any other thoughts on the Iran issue? Okay. I think we're going to have to, unless there are any other points that people want to raise, I think we're going to have to wind up there. All I would just say is, at the moment, there's a lot of effort being put in by the Russians to divide the West from its allies. And on top of that list, of course, is to separate the continental European countries from their transatlantic allies. Hence, we see a development of autonomous EU defense strategy, which cannot help the NATO alliance. We see within the European Union, there are countries, Cyprus, for example, the Republic of Cyprus, where Turkish interests have been deliberately abused and refused, but where there's been a friendly relationship on behalf of the Republic of Cyprus government with Russia. Russia, of course, would love to see the closure of the British territories that remain in Cyprus, and therefore our military bases there. So that would be another target for Russian activity. And gradually they want to nibble away at our allies, one by one. And they're very strong in certain East European countries. But of course, Turkey would be a real jewel if Russia could contrive to pull Turkey away from the Western alliance. So with that cautionary note, if I could thank our speakers, Harold Rhoda, Nero Zagros, and Matt Brodsky. Thank you very much for giving us your views this afternoon. I mean, there's it just shows how difficult this relationship is. And we've got to do a lot of very clever thinking to try and get it back on track. And my thanks on behalf of the Gold Institute for all those that have joined us for this discussion. So thank you so much.